When I was first starting out, I had a very simple question for the people I worked with who knew much more than I did. I said, how do I get my stuff to sound better than it does already? What can I change on the recording end to make things better? So the tracking end, right? They always had the same answer. And a lot of people I asked always had the same answer. So this is obviously the answer. And it's still the answer to this day. Number one, it's great mic. Number two is great mic pre. So with your mic preamp. Number three is a compressor. Number four is a good converter. And it's in that order. In other words, you change the mic, that'll improve your sound a lot. If you want to get better than that, you add a great mic pre. This is where stuff like the Neve 1073 comes into play. You've heard people talk about it a lot, and BAE makes the version without the EQ on it, which is actually not technically a 1073, but I'm not getting into that jargon. Before people jump out and say, that's not a 1073 if it doesn't have an EQ, I'm gonna get out in front of that. It's called a 1272, I think, without the EQ on it. But that was the first piece of gear I bought that made everything sound amazing. So I want you guys to know, if you're scared about EQing and this and that, you don't have to stress. You can get the mic preamp without the EQ, because when I was starting out, just adding this BAE DMP, they call it a 1073 DMP, but it's really the 1272 preamp, which is the preamp that was in the 1073. But what you should know is that just by having the EQ circuit in on a 1073, it's going to change the sound a little bit. And that's what everyone's going to want to say. And the truth is, yeah, it changes it a little bit, but it's still amazing without that circuit. Let's just be clear. It sounds amazing without the circuit. And I know this from experience, because as soon as I started with, okay, I improved my mic. At the time, I think I had the Bluebird, the blue microphone called the Bluebird, right? And that's a decent sounding microphone. It's a large diaphragm condenser, sounds pretty good. But just having that mic plugged in, at the time, I think it was an M-Box 2 Pro that I was using, all right? Just running that into there was okay. Then I added the, mic preamp, the BAE DMP, the 1073 DMP, which is, like we said, 1272 mic preamp, which is a Neve style sounding mic preamp. What it's going to do is beef up your sound, make it thicker, add harmonic content to it, just make it sound better overall. Every single thing I recorded through the good mic, and that was hugely helpful. Then after that, what I realized is I can get a better performance on my vocal, on the guitars, on the bass, whatever I'm doing, if I add a compressor. So what compressor? Everybody always recommended 1176 because it's the most versatile compressor there is, in my opinion. It's the workhorse. So if you only got one, what do you want to do? In my opinion, it's get the 1176 as your first compressor, because it will teach you just how to dial in attack and release times. It'll also be super versatile. You can go from 4 to 1, 8 to 1, 12 to 1, 20 to 1, or all buttons in. And this is just going to, every time you mess with the different ratios, it's going to change the knee and how the compressor's working, and it's also going to give you a little more or less compression. So it's a very great compressor for every source. And there's a reason Andrew Shep said if he's going to record a vocal, all he needs is a Neve 1073 and an 1176. There's a reason he said that, because it's true. It's amazing. It'll always make everybody sound good, and you can use it on a variety of sources, not only just vocals, but I love it for vocals, all right? And like I said, it was my first piece of gear, and the difference was huge. But then after that, the converter mattered a lot. As soon as, at the time, the M-Box 2 Pro converters weren't that great, and just switching to, I got a Mytek at the time, this Mytek 192, and I was able to go digitally from the Mytek into my audio interface, all just digital. So in other words, the Mytek was doing the analog to digital conversion instead of the M-Box 2 Pro, and then the M-Box 2 Pro just grabbed the digital signal to run it into Pro Tools. When you're doing digital to digital, there's no signal, there's no quality loss. When you're going analog to digital and you're using a bad converter, there is a difference. But I believe today, converters are significantly better than they used to be. So I also believe great converters have a sound to them and are very amazing. So, I use expensive converters for a reason, but if you didn't want to spend the money on the converter, like that's the thing. If you have a modern interface today, you may be able to get away with not doing, right? But just that, and that's why I say it's the number 4. It's the last thing. Mic pre, compressor, then the converter. That's the order of importance, in my opinion, okay? And once you have that chain, your sounds will be so much better. You can record a guitar with one mic and it will sound so much better if you're going through a mic preamp, like a Neve style mic preamp with the harmonic content it adds. That's going to sound way better than any stock preamp that you get in your interface. It's going to always sound better. So when people want to know how to level up their sound, there's no way around it. When I bought this gear, my stuff leveled up. And this was like the first gear I bought because I was very conscious of what I was spending and what was important. And it made a huge difference. So it's not like a little difference. It's a big difference. Your quality of what you record will be better. So then what you have to do to it when you're mixing, you won't have to do as much. You'll be doing much, much less, significantly less to make your stuff sound good. It will just naturally sound good out the gate, and then you're going to have to do your own tweaking and make it fit in the mix and stuff, but it won't be as much. You won't have to add all this personality and character to it. It will already be thick and great and have harmonic content in it that's just amazing. So, and this works, like I said, all instruments. If you're doing a bass, you can run it through something like that. If you're doing vocal, anything, a guitar, if you want to put it on a kick drum, like it really doesn't matter how you use it. But it's one mic preamp and it costs money. One compressor and it costs money. Now this is a thing. Let me just also throw this in. If you're working on a podcast, something like that, I did some research for somebody recently because I do private lessons, and somebody that I was working with actually wanted to know how to make their podcast that they're about to do sound better. And they'll have most of the time 2 mics, sometimes maybe 3, but that was their limitations and what they need. And I started doing some research. What I found was, and I'm not endorsed, this is not a plug or a promo for anything I'm talking about, but the Vault by UAD, I found particularly interesting for that use, for that specific purpose. And really for anybody's purpose, if you don't want to spend money on analog gear, let's say, like, for example, that Vault thing has 1176, like an emulation in every channel. So that means before you get into your computer and have to worry about, eating up anything that will increase your latency or make your computer work a little harder, like anything in the box before that, you can add the 1176 sound. And I think it was a combination of, like, it was right between 4-to-1 and 8-to-1 that you can set it. So like 6-to-1, which sounded like a pretty good number, I thought, on all 4 channels. So you can basically, like, that seems like the ideal thing for if you're going to do a podcast with 4 mics, let's say, 3, 4 mics, you could basically give everyone their own compressor so that you can get a little hotter signal without clipping anything, and it's all done right on the unit, so you don't have to add processing power or anything within your computer. You don't have to have a particularly great computer to be able to do it on all 4 channels. Like, I thought all that sounded great to me, and the mic pre's and everything in it were supposed to be okay. So I was like, all right, that's interesting. Now, again, like I said, if you're recording music, I have to just stress, it's very different than if you're recording a bunch of vocals by themselves with no music. Because like a podcast, it doesn't really matter how great each of the vocals sounds. Like, you don't really need them to be harmonically rich, so to speak. So that's why something like that may be perfect for that situation, because you get everybody to have their own compressor without spending a lot of money on a compressor for everybody. But you also don't need that Neve mic pre in front of this, between the mic and the interface to really beef it up, because there's nothing with it. You would need it for music. If you're recording music of any kind, you want your vocal to be powerful and to cut through and to sound great and warm and thick. And you want it to, it's in comparison to everything else. As soon as you add a beat track, you add drums, you add bass, you add guitars, keyboards, you want that vocal to hold its own. In that case, I would say you should absolutely invest in a good mic preamp. It's going to make you sound better no matter what. You know, I've said before, I've got a ton of different mic preamps because I like the way a great mic preamp sounds. So like I've got EQ channels with mic preamps built in them by Neve that are great. I've got that DMP 1073 that's great. And just that was the first thing I got, and it's so audible, the difference. It, like, for a tuned ear especially, but even without that, just running through that, you will have much more power in your signal. Then the ability to tame it, cut the peaks off, bring up the low level information a little bit, is going to make everything sound better also. So that's the 1176 part of this. So it's like you need the 1073, you need the 1176. You could maybe get away without a high-end converter. So like you don't have to go crazy, I'd say, but if you want every edge possible, you probably want a great converter also. But let's just say today, you wouldn't maybe need that. So, and even in that other situation, if you're going to do music and you didn't want to buy the 1176, like maybe you could get away with the 1176 built into that vault, maybe. You know, so I just want my videos to kind of work for everybody. So it's like if you're going to start out and you're trying to figure out what to buy, that's an interesting thing to buy because it has the 1176 built in. I really like that. It's definitely one of the most useful things ever, okay? And if you wanted to go another route and buy, you know, a compressor that will work with a good mic preamp, the FMR, the really nice compressor, the RNC, is one of my favorites for, like, if you're talking about cheap, great compressor, that's the best cheap, great compressor there is, in my opinion. It's 200 bucks-ish, a little less, and it sounds really good for what a compressor is without spending, you know, 1,500. Without spending 1,000 plus, that thing is really awesome. So that's where it's like, you know, 5 times less than a compressor that you like. If you're going to go all the way and you're looking to build your gear and have stuff that sounds great, I would say go for an 1176 that is great. Make sure it's a great sounding 1176. Get it from any of these companies where you get and some return policy in case you don't like the way it sounds. But just having that kind of compressor with your mic pre is going to really level up what's going on. All right. And the way it runs is your microphone into your microphone preamp, into your 1176, into your interface. Okay. That's how the signal chain works. And, you know, seriously, when I tell you, you want to level up, that's how you level up. And it doesn't matter if you get the Neve EQ, you know, the 1073 with EQ, because that thing is thousands. You could easily get the DMP like I got, and you'll notice a ton of difference, huge difference. That was the best piece of gear I probably bought, like when I was starting out, the absolute best game-changing piece of gear. And then the 1176 after it was critically game-changing. My 1176 is a particularly unique one that has two transformers on it, two different ones. So I can switch between like the Edker, I think it's pronounced Edker. It could be Edcore or Edker, I'm not sure, or the Carnhill. So like I have the choice of either one on my 1176 because that's just the one that I had bought. So like once you realize the value of transformers and stuff, just by flipping the transformer from one to the other, the difference in sound is palpable. You can tell. So when I want one sound, I flip to one. When I want the other, I flip to the other. So really awesome stuff. And trust me when I tell you, you won't regret owning those pieces of gear if you're trying to record stuff to make it sound better on the way in. Tracking, okay? Mixing, this stuff is not really usable unless you want to use it on a mono channel. And so in other words, if you want to send out one thing to it and then run it back into the computer, that's something mono, you can do that. But otherwise, you'd need 2 1176, units to do it in stereo. You'd need 2 of the Neve style mic pre's to do it in stereo. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not really necessary, in my opinion, like from the mixing end to own that stuff, to make your stuff sound great. Sure. Does it help a little? Maybe. Yeah, sure. But what I'm saying is for tracking, super helpful to be able to run through great stuff and make it sound much better. Let me know what you guys bought at any given time that made a difference to what you're recording. Like, what was the game changers for you? I'm really kind of curious, not even kidding, about knowing about that, because I think it could be helpful. Other people will find this helpful. Love to hear about it, all right? Subscribe if you haven't already. This is Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this. Take it easy.